What's up, everybody? It's Chad from Ask Chad, Grassy Logic. I'm here today with my buddy Koko Dean. He's a photographer in the industry, but I'll give him the chance to tell you guys a little more about that today. Today's episode is called Medical Cannabis is Dying, Psilocybin Advisory Group, and UNM did it again with another study. So let's just jump into it, and I'll let Koko and Dean introduce himself and tell you what he is and what he does.
What's up, guys? Yep, I'm Koko. I own 4C's Cannabis. And yeah, we're a photography company. We do, some basic marketing and stuff for different dispensaries and grows and things like that. So we shoot products. We shoot with like some of the micro influencers around town. Pretty much if your business or whatever needs it, we can shoot it. Like we do corporate headshots. Yeah. So we mix it up quite a bit. Yeah. So it's been good. It's been fun. I've really enjoyed our break into the industry. I love the cannabis industry. Obviously, I'm a cannabis patient, enthusiast. Way more than just a cannabis photographer. I dig being able to see all the people and connecting with people and stuff. Yeah. But yeah, the industry's been very good to us so far.
Nice. Yeah. I'm glad to hear that, because, I met you guys through the Southwest Trade Association and, through the meetings and everything. And you guys were there taking photos and, it was really cool to connect with you guys and see at all these different events. Have you guys really been taking more photos of products, or has it been more like places photos? Or
it's pretty balanced, dude. I love the Southwest Cannabis Trade Association things and the events because, part of me is like, I want to be out there, between my wife and I, of course, like documenting what's happening because, we've talked about this before. It's like, it may not feel like it right now, but like, this is all kind of historical. This is all brand new industry, new people coming up. Like at some time down the road, it's going to be like, they're going to need to remember that, have somebody that chronicled what really happened. Yeah. Who was at the meetings, who was there, who was talking, who were the major players, who was helping with legislation, those kinds of things. And so like, I'm glad that we've kind of been able to kind of fill that need in the industry and kind of, have a lot of photos of the people. But then, yes, we do the products and that keeps us busy. And, but yeah, it's been a pretty even balance to answer your question. All of it's fun. I like all of it.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Well, how long have you guys been doing the photography and all this stuff with the cannabis industry here? Are you guys on the medical side too? Or
so we've been doing photography professionally since 2013. We've worked, in the wedding industry. We've worked with families, and we still do. We still have a side of our business that is that. Yeah. But with cannabis, we started in. I always get the dates wrong because COVID always screws me up. But 2021. It was January 2021 when the idea for 4Cs came about. We had just gotten our medical cards in December 2020, and it was but a friend that reached out to us and was like, he's a cannabis photographer up in Albuquerque, and he was just like, oh yeah, we need more creatives in this space, and this is still when it's just medical. Yeah. So that's really when we started connecting with some of the medical, the legacy dudes, and getting that done. And yeah, so we've been doing it now since then, and it's just, dude, it's been it's taken off so fast. It's crazy.
Yeah. And you know what? And I think you connected me with your buddy from Albuquerque a while back.
Reese.
Yes.
Reese Harper, Heart of Cannabis, great guy.
Yeah.
And so he was the one that kind of ushered us in. And it was really cool because that's what we found in the industry is we found a lot of very welcoming people who were kind of happy to share with us what they're doing and trying to bring, more people into that space. And so we kind of now in that light also, I'm telling more people dude, if they're creatives, come into the space. We need more. I'm not definitely holding so tight to it's competitions. Nah, dude. There's a lot of work to be done.
This pie's so big.
Yeah, we could definitely use some help. So if anybody's watching who's a photographer or a videographer or a creative of any kind, artist, whatever, dude, we need you in this industry, and that's true.
Definitely. I mean, because one of the reasons is that it's so restrictive on the federal front for advertising, even on the state front, that creatives and everything are kind of needed to get around those. Using social media. Other fronts too to kind of get in there. So I mean, creatives and everything, even photographers, it's great because you need a picture of your product. I mean, I appreciate when someone's selling something and it's the picture of one of the buds that's in the jar or in the product, and it's not some stock photo.
Right. I agree with that. I mean, of course, I would agree with that because that's a little bias, kind of my bias. Yeah, dude, it's cool to be able to see the quality of what you're actually going to go into the store and get. Yeah. Not just some random, bud or on the plant itself from whatever random grow. Yeah. It's no, this is what you can actually expect to see. The quality you can get. You get to see, how good the trichomes look, how good, everything the shape is, and just the overall quality of that particular product. I agree with that 100%.
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, me too. And you know, like, do you guys ever like show your setups and stuff? Because I always find it very intriguing to see like, you know, photography setups. Because sometimes you have like this amazing photo where you like zoom out and you look at the whole thing. You're like, oh, that's so cool the way they did that. You know, it's so simple.
On our Instagram, we do like my wife. Truly, my wife is like the main creative. Like she's taught me how to shoot, but like she's the baller, right?
Yeah.
But she'll do like time lapses of everything she's doing, how she's like creating like her, if it's like flat lay work, where she has to do a lot of like set design and stuff, which sounds funny, but you have little sets like this big.
Yeah.
But like she'll do time lapses of her setting everything up, shooting it, and then like you get to see sort of that big picture and sort of like everything that goes into it. She'll even like show her editing. Sort of her editing process and stuff in those behind the scenes, which is really cool. And then, then usually at the end of those videos, we'll do a flash of like several of the finished product photos, and you get to sort of see that before and after. So yeah, we do that, and it's cool. It's neat to see how it all comes together.
No, it is. It's like the behind the scenes kind of look.
Mm-hmm.
And real quick before I forget, how can the people find you? Like, social media and everything.
Yeah, so we have a website. It's www.4cscannabis.com, and on Instagram at 4cscannabis. So it's FOUR, the number 4, C's like oceans, and then cannabis.
Okay, cool. Yeah. And I appreciate you, enunciating it like that, because some people like 4C, for I see you, like
right. And it's a play on words, and so it can get a little murky.
Yeah, but I found it clever, and I like it. I really love what you guys do, and of course, I follow and see what you guys do.
Appreciate that, man.
It is needed what you guys do in the industry, and I think it's kind of overlooked sometimes. And that's one reason I wanted to highlight some of the, not just the dispensaries, the grows, all that stuff. There's other people in the industry who work outside of that,
right?
Who really make this industry thrive.
Yeah, ancillary, some people say, or like cannabis adjacent, and and there's a lot of us. You're talking about photographers, people that do insurance, banking, all the necessary things, lawyers, all that, whatever. I'm not saying elevating us to that sort of like professional, professionalism or whatever, but it is important. It is a part of it. I think that cannabis businesses that are looking to stay in the market, stay competitive, and stay relevant, they need to focus a good amount into their marketing. I know when the industry, especially the adult use, the rec industry came about, it wasn't hard to move product off the shelves.
No.
It wasn't as saturated then as it is now, and there was a huge high demand. The demand still exists, but it's becoming more and more saturated every day. So how do you stand out? And there's a multitude of ways to do that. Some host events, some sponsor things, some, but like having good quality creative work on your website, on your social media, showing your product, can be as important as having some of the best strains even. Because the way you bring it to your market, to your clients and stuff, can have a pretty big impact on whether or not you're going to be successful, and those feet are going to come through the doors. Yeah,
definitely. I agree. Because I've seen it at the stores. Like a lot of the foot traffic that I once saw before really isn't there anymore because it's so saturated. And this is what I said needed to happen on the medical side, but not at this rate. We just needed more dispensaries because there wasn't enough.
Right.
And to be honest, we'll get to the medical cannabis thing here in a little bit because there is some issues in our program, and it's been a while. So is there anything else you really want to talk about with the ancillary business that you've been running and everything before we get on to the next topics?
No, I mean, I think I pretty well covered it. I mean, it's fun what we do. I enjoy it a lot, and I've had a lot of fun connecting with the local businesses, on up to some of the other statewide businesses that we've gotten to kind of connect with. And I just hope that if you are a business owner and you're watching, and I know they put so much into getting everything built, everything established, getting their doors open, all the regulations. It's a lot to consider.
Yeah.
But consider your marketing, because it is important.
No, I agree. If you're not really having a budget for your marketing, you're doing it the wrong way. This isn't, year 2000, 2001, where it has to be super kind of secretive. Because we got our program around 2007 is when, they passed the bill and everything. But even years after that, going into it, even when I joined in 2013, it was still very hush hush and, kind of scary. So,
didn't want to make a lot of splashes.
Yeah. So with that being said, guys, thank you so much for sharing with that. At the end, I'll give you another chance to plug your business.
No worries, man. No worries.
So we're going to move on to our next topic. Our first topic, actually, it's a very important one. It's medical cannabis is dying. And what that means is we've had medical cannabis, as I said, since 2007. It was signed by Governor Bill Richardson. And after that, the state really kind of had a restrictive mindset when it came to cannabis, simply because of the landscape that we were in. they were becoming very restrictive and cracking down on a lot of states that had medical programs, California, Colorado, those markets, first, and, they were the ones that we saw the most. And actually earlier this week, I was interviewed by a Santa Fe based reporter. And I guess he talked to a couple of people, Duke Rodriguez and a couple other people in the industry, and he wanted to talk to, a patient. I've been around the industry since 2013. And so, I've seen it change, exponentially, and I've been a part of it. So it was really great to be a part of that article. And, and whenever it comes out, guys, it'll be on my social media. Don't worry. So make sure you give me a follow so that way, you stay up to date with it. So anyway, the topic was medical cannabis in New Mexico and where it's really headed. And I've made this prediction before. I'm on record stating that historically medical cannabis markets and programs kind of die once they enter into an adult use market.
Right.
And simply because to a lot of people, and I'm not saying, it's the majority, but it kind of feels that way, has the mindset that, well, what's the point?
Right.
I only got this card so I can smoke, because a lot of our patients in the program, we're only in there just so they can use cannabis legally.
Right.
And okay, fair enough. But, there are people who actually need it medically.
Have severe needs. Yeah.
Exactly. And I remember, with the last podcast I was a part of, I made a prediction that we were probably going to slash our program about in half within about 2 years. I think, I have to go back and watch, but, correct me if I'm wrong. But yeah, I think I said about half what it was going to say, what it was going to go down to. And to be honest, it kind of seems like we might be heading towards that trend. And we might be headed towards that trend depending if a few things change or don't change.
Right.
I mean, what is your kind of thought process on that before I get into the numbers and, tell everybody what I predict now?
Well, I think that is a pretty dire prediction. And I think I'm seeing what you were talking about, what you're still talking about. And it's unfortunate because, we ran on the idea of cannabis being an important medicine, particularly for these patients with severe needs and stuff. And that's what got us to this place, to any place with the legalization of cannabis, because it's what it is. It's what it's for. And it is a great medicine that, can benefit a lot of people. And that's what it was doing during the medical, during the medical heyday, if you will. Yeah. And now with the focus being primarily on adult use rec, with the tax revenue and stuff like that, of course, money talks, and there is a major shift. And I think that, I don't know if a whole lot of consideration is still being given to the patients. And I'm speaking as a patient myself. I mean, we both existed in that space before rec. Yeah. And so, I would like to see, a better, more thriving, like just medical market, and have more consideration, some protections for patients and things to make sure that they have access at all times. Because it's great. We have, there's a lot of weed on the market and stuff like that, but we need those medical specific products to make sure that they're reaching these people that need it. Because it's just like, if a pharmacy runs out of, a particular person's medication, it's like, that can be devastating. Yeah, and exactly. That's a very terrifying place to be when you are, reliant on this medicine just to be normal, or just to
be alive.
Exactly. And so, that needs to be at the forefront of the legislators' minds. It needs to be the forefront of the industry's mind to remember that, our patients still need to come first. No, I agree. 100%.
I agree. And that's something that I've said for years is, the medical cannabis patients in the program really needs to come first. We can't forget it. I know a lot of times some people in the industry just told me to forget it in the industry, but it's something that, maybe it is a pipe dream, maybe it's something I'm fighting for that's dying, but it's something that I really want to fight for. And that, is really, I've held close to me, because how many veterans and everything have come in this program, how I've helped, and who've told me and come to me and said, this has probably saved my life. Yeah. And so I appreciate you steering me to the right direction with this cannabis thing.
And I think that the average consumer doesn't understand why it's a big deal. Yeah. Because they say, oh, there's plenty of weed on the market. They can get their weed. It's it's not the same.
No, it's not.
The regulations that are on the recreational market, being like 10 milligrams per, gummy or whatever, with 100 milligram pack being the limit, is not enough for a lot of like the real severe, the patients with cancer. They talk about the veterans and stuff, who some of these guys need, hundreds of milligrams of, THC or whatever in there. That's what they were getting, with the medical market.
Yeah, with the regimen.
And so with those products being less and less available, it still is a big deal, because how can they afford to get to the dosage size they need, at the recreational prices, and when they have to buy 5 and 6 packs for what they were able to get in one pack before.
Yeah.
So I don't think people really realize that having those medical specific products, lacking availability for these people is, I mean, it's a major concern.
Yeah.
And more than a concern, it's something that the industry at large just cannot allow to happen.
And I've actually been a big proponent for years, on that too. And the industry on the medical side, there's a lot of people who, a couple of dispensary owners that said we need to have our patients to be able to purchase higher limited, THC, caps. There shouldn't be a cap actually for medical patients, in my opinion.
Right.
You guys feel how you feel, but just as a patient myself, we would probably benefit more if there was no cap. Because we actually had a THC cap on the medical side for a while. It was actually at 60%, then it bumped it up to 10% to 70%. And what they had to do is dilute everything. And so everything in New Mexico was, quote unquote weak. You get a pen, it couldn't be above 70%.
Right.
And so they had to add more additives to it to, kind of cut back to it. So finally they agreed that, that was a little arbitrary and there's really no reason to do that.
Right.
Because other states have tried that. And it didn't work, and it really didn't work here. There's a lot of shady stuff going on, a lot of people, and I get it, business trying to make money,
right?
But it just caused more issues than it did anything. So I kind of feel this is the same thing, but the ones who are suffering are the patients again, because we have to spend more money to get the same product that we would have got, last year on the shelves that would have been significantly cheaper and even more potent.
Yeah, and I just think that comes down to education. We need to make sure these legislators are hearing these things, these real world problems from these real patients that are struggling right now, because that is happening.
Yeah.
And it is a concern that I've had, and I know that you've spoken to that for a while now. So it's just like, what can we do going forward? How do we ensure that the medical program is pushed into a more robust direction, and make sure that there are protections in place for our especially our most severe medical patients.
No, I agree. Because we wouldn't be where we are without the medical programs.
Right.
New Mexico is actually the first state, and I say this a lot, but I keep repeating it until it's in everybody's head. New Mexico was the first state to have a medical cannabis program around 1974. We had it for about 10, 15 years, and it dissolved sometime in the 80s, close to the 90s. California came in, and then they did their thing in the 90s, and they did a lot better. However, they're championed as a first, but New Mexico were actually first. So we've been dealing with cannabis for a very long time, and I kind of feel that the direction we're going with medical cannabis is the wrong direction, and I feel that there is something that needs to change. However, I would like to hear from the legislator side what their concerns are from wanting to change this, instead of just us yelling and getting angry. I want to communicate and hear. So if any legislators are watching, sometimes they do, reach out. I'd love to have you on the show. And another way that we can get people education, because here at Ask Chad Grassy Logic, I'm all about education. The reason why I'm doing this show is so I can educate the public and get you guys the information that you need, so that way you're educated on the industry, on product use, on different verbiage and stuff like that, what's going on in the industry. So the best way that you can get your legislators educated is actually sharing this podcast with them. So if you repost it or something, just give them a tag, or just repost it to their page or something. That's the best way to do it, because the only way we're going to stop the ignorance is education.
Agreed.
And that's why I started this podcast, is to mass educate everybody in New Mexico, and who knows, even in the nation, about New Mexico and cannabis.
Yeah, and I think it'd be cool too, like if you guys have stories, if there's people out there that are struggling, getting their medication and stuff, write into here, write to Chad and talk to them. Let's get some of these stories. Let's compile them so we can bring them to these legislators, because if they are passing legislation from an uninformed place or a misinformed place, where they're, like you say, arbitrarily making little regulations where they don't really belong, they don't make sense, and it's actually at the detriment, particularly of the medical patients and, the medical market, then we need this, this push of people to come together, put these stories together and tell them, because they need firsthand accounts. We need to make it make sense. We need to make them understand that, this is the real effect that these arbitrary regulations, for the sake of trying to make it look like you have control, or whatever the reasoning is, what it's doing, why it's, negatively impacting these patients, because it's really, really important that we protect them.
I agree 100%. So what I'm going to do now is we're actually going to tell you guys some of the reasons why our program is kind of in shambles of where it's at. But first, I really want to give some numbers. So as of last month of January 31st, 2023, because at the time of recording, some of you may be watching this in December, 2 years from now, who knows? So as of January 31st, 2023, there's 108,000 patients in the program, a little more than that. I'm actually patient 8,000 something. So I joined the program, fairly early. And so I've actually watched it grow, from the small thing. I remember when it hit 10,000, I was like, yeah, we're growing. And more people started finding out about it, but the reason why I'm saying these numbers, because actually about last year, we saw a dip. So we saw a peak in our numbers and then just a straight drop in numbers. And I'll give you guys those numbers right now. So in December of 2021, our numbers were 127,000, and it was increasing every month. And so after that, in January of 2022, so about a year ago, we were at 130,000 patients. So, it was growing. And, one of the reasons was that we didn't have any shops yet. The only way to go to a dispensary was to have your medical cannabis card. You still had, and to this day, you still have more protections with a medical cannabis card than you do without it.
Right.
And that is true. And that's actually one reason why it's good and a good idea to keep your medical cannabis card. And, we'll get to more reasons why on that too. So in January, that was a number 130,000. And then we go down to May, we drop down, boom, it goes to 135,000. And that's when it reaches its peak. And it's 135,000. We think that we're going to be doing great, but no, it drops because the reason why, the month before in April, we legalized cannabis. So all the shops started to open up and everything was going through.
Right.
One of the first things I've noticed that people started to complain about, because I did predict it. I said, guys, starting tomorrow, all of your concerns are going to change night and day. First concern, why aren't patients being seen first? Is there going to be enough cannabis for patients? In some places we're saying, oh, we have to tax patients, when that was not the case. In some places, like, oh, we don't serve patients, when that's illegal.
Right.
And so there was a lot of confusion and or whatever, but all those concerns that were from the medical side weren't in existence anymore. To this day, for the most part, they aren't. There's a few things that stayed behind, but it was really not alarming, but it was almost to the T of what I said was going to happen. Once the shops open up, the numbers are probably going to start declining. But, once we go legal, they're really going to start to decline.
Right.
And it took a few months for them to really kind of start to decline down and hit that peak. So I kind of see from then on, those numbers haven't changed. And to this point right now, we're at 108,000, and we've lost, a small city's worth of people in our program.
Right.
And so that's really alarming for any program at all. Losing that many people within that time span is alarming. And every month it's kind of just going down, it's dwindling. And we're getting to that point where it might drop to about half. And, my prediction before something may change. And I don't know, maybe too late then. What do you think?
Well, the thing that I still see, like, yeah, we're losing, medical patients or people that are holding cards, fine. But that still means that, let's say we drop to half, and let's say that number, because what do you say? We're still sitting at about 100,000, 110,000?
Yeah, just about. Yeah.
That's about the population of Las Cruces.
Yeah.
So that means that every single person, 110,000 out of, 2 million in New Mexico?
Yeah, 2 million.
There's still these people that need access to medical grade cannabis.
Yeah.
And so regardless of, the shift in numbers, you still have a huge number of people, a pretty good percentage of the population. Like I said, 2 million is what's in New Mexico. Well, whatever it is, the entirety of Las Cruces, if they were all medical patients, basically in the numbers, still need this access. So it's not like, we're talking about a small niche of people, an insignificant, number. We're not talking about a high school size worth of people. We're talking about 100,000 people. That's a ton of people still.
It is. It literally is the whole city, essentially, of Las Cruces. And that is alarming, and these many people need this stuff, and they need it in a way that's going to be beneficial to them, and not just whatever the state feels is going to work.
I mean, what we should really be saying, if we really want them to pay attention, is it's 100,000 people, and that's 100,000 voters.
Exactly.
If you want the legislators to really listen,
it's
100,000 people who vote.
Yeah.
So that's not an insignificant number. When you look at, the Doniana County elections, where 5,000 people tops show up, or, whatever it is, 100,000 people is not insignificant. That's a lot of patients with a lot of need who need, so it's imperative to make sure that you don't let the medical side die.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Yeah.
And I told actually our current governor, Michelle Lujan Grisham, when she was running the first time, and I was touting this at the time. I said, at the time we had about 80,000 patients. And I said, that's 80,000 votes, that can swing one way or another, depending on how the medical program goes. And don't get me wrong, you have your diehards who are going to vote regardless of what happens.
Yeah.
You know, and that works on both sides or all sides, excuse me. And so I try to tout that too. And that's a good point that you make. And that's something that I've said in the past. And one thing that people forget too is that the business owners and the employees, they all vote too. So you guys want to keep that in mind as legislators. These businesses, they vote. So if they don't like what you're doing, they vote you out.
Well, and it's all about messaging, man.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
people are like, oh, you know, that's 100,000. Oh, they can't get their weed. That's so sad. But that's because they're seeing it only as weed. They're thinking of it in party drug mode. No, these are people that can't get their medicine. Dude.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, you know, you tell that to somebody who can't, you know, a diabetic who can't get their insulin or somebody else. You know, when you frame it appropriately, that is like a really, really savage problem.
Yeah.
And it can get ugly. And like, I don't care if they are a diehard voter one way or the other. All of a sudden you deny them your medication. The people who are responsible, they're going to, you know, take a look at who those people are and vote them out.
Oh, no, I agree.
That will happen.
And that should happen, guys. You know, let's just speak with our pens and the voting ballots, you know, and, you know, if there's people that aren't helping, let's just make sure that we, you know, do our due diligence and vote, you know, because our voting numbers are kind of low in the state. You know, and, you know, it could be a little higher, especially in the area of Las Cruces. It's very sad how low our voting numbers are. There's new people moving into 5,000 people will vote in the whole county, in the county of, I think, 200,000 plus, the whole, or maybe even more, way more than that, just in the whole county. Or there's probably way more than that because just within the 60-mile radius of Cruces, there's 3.3 million people. So
without looking at the numbers, it's still 5,000 is ridiculous because you know, if you're talking about Doña County and just Las Cruces alone has 100,000, that's a miserable percentage turnout.
Oh yeah,
you know,
it's very, very, very low. And then, you know, maybe we'll compare it to the other cities of the nation and, you know, see what those numbers compare to or something like that. And so what I'm trying to get at is, guys, please vote. You know, if you're 18 over, if you're turning 18 the next election, register to vote. It's really not hard. There's not like a real specific place. I just go down to the county, vote, and do my thing. I vote early. It's just a lot easier that way, and your vote still counts. So I'm a big proponent of voting.
Well, and reach out to your legislators.
Yeah,
too.
exactly.
Like, you know, there's a pretty good reception, you know, in the county. There's, you know, I think, what is it? Bill Souls is the state representative down here. They're all pretty cannabis friendly.
Yeah. Even Joanne Ferrari, she's my representative. Yeah. I said her name right. She's very pro cannabis and everything too.
Well, and regardless of that, they still need to be hearing from these people because, you know, there's only so much that we as cannabis business owners, representatives, adjacent people can say because, you know, obviously coming from us, there's going to be a bias because, you know, business, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But coming from actual patients who have needs and stuff, like that's who they're really, really looking to support. And those are the ones that are going to understand the medical, the implications of what their medical legislation and stuff will look like. So reach out to them. They're very, very, I mean, they have great reception as far as I've seen. I've developed a good rapport with many of these people.
Yeah.
So reach out to them. You know, voting is great. Do it 100%. I will never say not to do that, but reach out to these people and tell them your stories. If you're having issues, they're there to listen. And we've got a staff who will get it to the right places and put it in front of the right people's, you know, put it in their ears and in their eyes.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, guys, they work for us, you know, not the other way around. So keep that in mind. You know, you are allowed and it is your right to speak to your representatives about these issues, even your congressional representatives. You can even email the president of the United States. So I really want to go in and we'll touch base about certain individual issues within the medical program that actually have been around for a while. And some are kind of new, I think. And some have been around for a long time. Like, let's talk about the what is a usable amount within the state that the DOH can like set, and they call it adequate supply.
Right.
And so right now it's set at 8 ounces, and 8 ounces, I believe, in a 3-month rolling period. You know, it could be, you know, longer, a little shorter now. I haven't checked in a while. I don't really buy from the dispensaries a lot. You know, I grow for myself and stuff most of the time. And it's 8 ounces. If you buy more than 8 ounces, they tax you. When it was just medical, you just were cut off. You weren't allowed to buy any more cannabis. And I thought that was always bullshit.
Right.
And I thought it was a slap in the face to everybody in the program and every patient in the program, even the veterans. You know, it was a slap in the face because, like we were speaking earlier, patients tend to use cannabis at a higher potency and a higher rate than, you know, just a regular person that's a recreational side. That's something that we've acknowledged in the past.
Right. And that seems just like an arbitrary number that they just came up with because, you know, they don't know how much a person needs for them to say 8 ounces, drop dead. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, you know, what if that person needs 8.5, 9, or on up.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? And you're going to limit them. Like that just doesn't work.
Yeah. And, you know, I get it. You know, the state wants their taxes and stuff, but they're getting a ton of taxes from Texas right now. You know, like over 50% of our sales come from out of state recreational sales. And so, you know, it's not really that much of a difference. Yeah, I get it. You know, 40 or 50% of that could be taxable into the state and everything. But you know what, guys, it's not. And that's the way we put our program. So that way we don't have to pay those taxes because the patients really come first. And in New Mexico, every medication is tax-free. And I think our Supreme Court came down and said that medical cannabis is within that category. And so it does, within our state constitution, have to be.
And doesn't that, like, in effect, like, make you feel like they're taxing the people who are the sickest?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, oh, you're so sick that you need more. Let's throw this additional tax on you because you need more cannabis. Like,
let's give you a sick tax.
That's a really jacked up system. Like, that doesn't make sense at all. And you're right, dude. There's so much tax revenue coming from the recreational market, and that's, you know, I believe, I mean, personally, that all cannabis use is medical to some degree. But the point is, it's for people that don't need it as much, like, you know, to be normal or whatever. Yeah. Tax them. That's what the recreational market is for. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Don't overtax them, but tax them.
Get your tax revenue that way. The patients, though, come on, like, because they need more, like, I think that's bullshit.
Yeah, just overtaxing the poor is essentially what it is.
Oh yeah.
And the system gets abused. You know, there's people who I've spoken to through the years who work for dispensaries who have seen it. They'll use patients, you know, units. They'll go in there and use some of the units for themselves or whoever else. And, you know, there's been actually times where on accident, people I've known have gotten their units of someone else because their name was similar. So they ended up with their units. So that guy was 4 units short that month, or you know, in that 3-month rolling period, because it does roll over. But every 3 months, you know, it change. You get your 8 ounces, so it does accumulate. However, why would we have to worry about that in the first place? Right.
It's like, yes, I get it. This doesn't affect every single patient, but I feel like the ones it does affect are the most vulnerable.
Yes, and you know, I've heard from these patients throughout the years, and you know that their issues are always the same. I don't have enough cannabis. It's a pain in the ass to, you know, ask for more cannabis, because you could ask for more and the DOH could grant you more. But, you know, I believe there was a limit, and it really wasn't as much more that you would, you know, really get. Because right now on the rec side, you can essentially buy as much as you want.
But even that's screwed up. Like, I have to go hat in hand, like, you know, can I please get some more because I need it? It's like, come on, like, these patients without a system in place where, like, you know, like when a doctor issues medication, you know, they will generally set, you know, oh, this, like a regular medication, I'm not talking cannabis, they'll say, oh, you'll get this many for this period, go to the pharmacy and get it, whatever. Well, we don't really have that system in place. And, you know, the needs are kind of dictated by the patients themselves. And again, the ones that are the most vulnerable, they require more. And I just don't think an arbitrary limit is the way to go. And especially to have these people come, you know, basically begging the DOH, oh, can I please have some more? Like, screw that, man. Like, these people need to be protected.
No, I agree 100%. And I want to clarify, guys, there is a limit when you go to the dispensaries of 2 ounces a day, or at a time, I think is what the law actually says, that you can buy at a dispensary. So you have a limit. However, at home, you don't have a limit how much you can have. So every day you can go buy an ounce, or at a time you can go buy an ounce, 2 ounces, whatever. And then you can just accumulate all that cannabis, and, you know, you're still going to be charged the same rate. Medical cannabis patients, you go past that 8 ounces, you start getting taxed at the, you know, pretty much a rate of 20% in the state. That adds up really quickly. You're paying $20 on $100.
Yeah.
You know, that adds up very, very fast, especially if you want to buy an ounce. And right now, ounces run anywhere from, you know, $100 to about $400.
Well, then right back to the point you made, medication is tax free.
Exactly.
And so that's what it is. It's not, you know, they're not just buying something to get high and party. They're just still buying their medication. You know what I mean? So it needs to be classified as such.
No, I agree. And, you know, as I said, the state did get sued, and the state did agree through the courts that, you know, medical cannabis is tax-free and should be tax-free in New Mexico, because it's seen as any other, you know, prescription drug in New Mexico, which is fine. That's great. That's good to hear, because actually I believe it is that employment insurance, I can't think of the name right now, they have to actually pay for your medical cannabis when you get it, or reimburse you for it.
Interesting.
Yeah, and so that's something to look up if you guys are on that.
So in some ways we are seeing some positive shifts.
Yeah, it took the courts to do it, though.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
That's the only problem, is we have to get the courts in to intervene. And I told people this for a long time, even on the adult use side, on the CRA side, we're going to have to get the courts involved for certain things to kind of clarify, because even the state's like, I'm not too sure how to, you know, go. We're just going to do it this way because that's how we're That's how we're interpreting it. And they'll say that, we're interpreting it this way. And that's the way that it goes, because if the state interprets it that way, it's going to take the court to really be the ones to change
to clarify that interpretation, right?
Yeah, exactly. So if you guys aren't clarified on something and you have the means, the money, or whatever, go ahead and sue the state. And, it's not like you have something against them. Maybe they just got it wrong, and the state and the courts can just clarify on it, and they can get a better opinion. So moving on, one of the other reasons is that DOH kind of left a bad taste in a lot of patients' mouths. Because through the years of secrecy, favoritism, not listening to us, adding arbitrary numbers and arbitrary rules in the program that made it harder, being so paranoid to the point where you were afraid to be a patient,
right?
Like it was, you kept it quiet from people. You didn't want people to know you were a patient. You kept that card that's in your wallet behind everything, you didn't want anybody to see it.
Right. Yeah. You don't wear it on your sleeve,
Yeah.
Yeah. I get that. I'm sorry. I interrupted the point that you were getting to on that, but it all comes back down to that regular stigma, which I think is we're making good progress, beginning to peel back. We're seeing a lot of, changes in the different councils, like the city council. We're seeing different things, at the county level. A lot of people from, different generations who were sold this idea of cannabis being, or of demonizing cannabis, if you will, that's beginning to peel back a little bit. So I think progress is being made. We just need to continue to be vocal and continue to, affect legislation appropriately, because, it's not what it was sold to us in the reefer madness days. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's something, totally different now, especially these days, in 2023, the cannabis industry as a whole nationwide is totally different than it was back then, and it's more accepted. You see TV shows, just regular TV, and there's, someone smoking a doobie like it's nothing,
right?
Because that it is nothing now,
right?
Smoking weed in most places, actually I was looking at Airbnb the other day, and you see the 420 friendly in there, they just let people know that, you just don't smoke in the house. We don't care if you smoke weed, obviously it's legal, so what do you really do?
Yeah.
I mean, they could tell no, because private residence,
sure, but we're seeing acceptance of it. That's happening.
Exactly. Yeah. And, if as long as us as cannabis consumers, we respect those boundaries of people, then we won't get such a stigma placed on our head, like the whole stigma thing. I see people, I'm gonna hit this vape pen through this pool noodle like a big bong in the middle of fucking Walmart. Like, guys, come on, please. Let's get rid of that stoner stigma, because it hurts us.
It does,
and it sets us back. And that one video probably set us back a couple of years.
Well, and think about what that does. We've been talking about the medical cannabis industry. What is seen and what is generally seen in media is always going to be the most negative thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Like negative press is what makes the headlines most often than not. So when you got these people making mistakes like that, when the next cannabis legislation ends up on a ballot or ends up wherever, and if what's in the forefront of people's minds is these people that that whole people that can't act right, if that's what's in their mind, then they're not going to look at the legitimacy of the issues that are being presented in front of them.
Yeah.
It just, they can't.
Yeah.
So that, you're right. That's important. Don't be idiots. Have mature, intelligent conversations about cannabis to allow this conversation to move us forward. We can't keep circling back, having the same conversation, having to say, black, when they're blaming black market products on, the different dispensaries and stuff like that.
That was my next point.
Yeah. We got to stop being in that place and be able to, progress this conversation forward.
Yeah. And we got to be able to talk to, everybody about it, including, everybody's kids. Talk to your kids about it. Have that conversation about cannabis. And, the reason why we're seeing this illicit market, or black market cannabis products inside of schools is because we're not having these conversations, and because it's not being addressed by the patients, and not the patients, but the parents, and the parents aren't parenting.
Right.
That they're not watching their kids and figuring out what's going on. I smoked weed when I was younger, but I got caught.
Yeah.
And you know what? My dad turned into Sergeant Lozano, and that sucked.
Yeah.
For about 2 weeks.
Well, and I can speak to that, dude. I've got 3 kids. I've got one that's 14, one that's almost 12, and one that's 6. And guess what? I have talked to them about cannabis. I've talked to them about it since, we were in the medical market, and they know. I mean, obviously I work, with my wife, and I work with the product regularly. We're there photographing it. We're there, we've got people in and out, with the kids have seen the product. They've been, around it and stuff. And it's not like a taboo thing, because they know it's medicine. They know they're not to touch it. But guess what? I also am responsible, and I keep it locked and away from them.
Yeah.
But the thing of it is, you have to be able to have that conversation. I honestly feel like, truly, and I've said this for a while, that 90% of New Mexico's issues could be solved by parents just talking to their kids real.
Yeah.
You know, like we have issues with, I mean, I'm going to go on a huge tangent, I'm sure, but I'll try to keep it short. You know, like you talk about New Mexico's issues with teen pregnancy, glass in education, all these things. It all comes down to parenting, dude.
Yeah.
Same thing with cannabis. You know, if you can parent your kids and talk to them, you know, and let them know about it appropriately, it's when, you know, you get into this, making it this big scary monster, that it becomes more interesting. It becomes taboo. You know what I mean? These kids, you're never going to take away the curiosity. So what do? You have to be the one to fill their cup with the best information before they go and get it from somewhere else.
No,
and those places are not going to be good, dude.
Yeah, because you remember getting the information from your friends when you were younger. It was terrible information.
Always.
Yeah. Like, it was terrible information. It was probably a little worse information than you get today from the internet. Sometimes maybe on the same par. But you know,
I mean, the internet's a really messed up place, and
really
kids are more connected now than we ever were.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing. There's another problem. That all comes down to parenting oversight. You know, so it all comes down to that. So yeah, I agree with you 100%. Talk to your kids about cannabis, and if you don't know how, there are numerous blogs and Instagram pages and stuff like talking about canna moms, canna parenting. There are actually resources that exist where to help guide you in that conversation, but you need to do it.
Yeah, no, you need, it's a conversation that you have to have, just like talking to your kids about sex education. You know, that's something that America lacks. And it's something that we refuse to talk to our kids about because for some reason there's a taboo on talking to them about it and then being educated. Then they go out and make these mistakes, you know, get pregnant early or
100%. Like because it's uncomfortable for us, we don't want to, you know, our job is to raise them to be, you know, the best versions of themselves they can be. And that's going to require of us some uncomfortable things, uncomfortable conversations, you know, bringing things to them so they have an awareness. Don't let them walk into the world naive.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like people give me shit because when my daughter was like 9, she was talking about how she was like interested in boys. And most dads, it's like, no, you cannot be interested in boys. You're only 9. I was like, no, you know, I was thrilled.
Yeah.
And I know that's going to be controversial. I was thrilled that my daughter was interested in boys at 9. You know why? Because she still gave a shit about my opinion.
Yeah.
I could teach her the boundaries. I could have the conversations with her and, you know, teach her about her power and her, you know, all these different things. While I still matter and I'm still the center of her world, me and her mom both, I have control and oversight of that. And then I'm opening up this opportunity for a back and forth. She will feel comfortable talking to me about these things and still does, dude. Like I said, she's almost 12. She's almost, you know, getting into that place where, you know, it's not too far away where, you know, boys are thinking about that one thing. But guess what? I've established that route. And the same is true for cannabis.
Yeah.
It's not going to be like, oh, the first time I'm ever exposed to it is because some girl had a black market vape in the bathroom. That's for dude.
It really
that's happening,
happens,
dude.
yeah.
In middle school, that shit is happening.
My dad was a teacher for years, and yeah, it happens all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so you want that to be their first exposure to it when someone, the peer pressure's on and they hand it to them like, oh, I don't know, I'll try it. And then something happens, especially with all the fentanyl products on the market. And shit.
Heavy metals.
Black market stuff is terrifying.
Yeah.
And so like you gotta nip that in the bud. You gotta get ahead of it and have these conversations.
Yeah. So that way they know, like, okay, you know, if I'm gonna do something like that, it would have to be a product I know that's safe. You know,
100%.
Don't smoke something black market because you know kids are kids.
Right.
You know, I smoked weed when we were a kid. I mean, I don't know if you did.
Dude.
Yeah,
I mean, bro, I come from the when we were getting the Mexican brick weed.
Yeah, exactly.
You
Get
know
a
what
little
I
pretty
mean?
ribbon in with your weed.
Yeah,
you find
like,
random crap in there.
And we grew up. I mean, it was sketchy, but it's not as sketchy as it is now with all the fentanyl products.
Yeah,
and stuff like that.
that stuff is scary because that didn't really exist back then, the threat of it. And, you know, now you have to really worry about that. And you need to know where your product comes from. You know, even when you go to like music festivals and, you know, the MDMA and the different drugs that are there, they have a tent where you can go get your drugs tested, you know, to make sure that it's pure whatever, or there's nothing else in it. So, you know, like that's why, you know, we really harp on cannabis testing. And, you know, that was another issue on the medical side that we've had for years was cannabis testing. And to this day, we still have an issue with cannabis testing, mostly because of the lack of cannabis testing facilities.
Right.
And, you know, that's something I'm going to harp on and talk about a lot, you know, here in the future or whenever, because we need them. You know, there's a lot of stuff that's getting through that's harmful to people. And, you know, we tout about the black market, but we have to, you know, kind of kick ourselves in the ass too, because we're allowing such crap to get through. No, don't get me wrong. It's not like it has fentanyl. At least I hope not, because we do have a black market cannabis issue in our, you know, regulated program.
Right.
So I hope to God that never happens. However, you know, that's something that should be caught on the testing side.
Well, right. And also to the point of the black market, I mean, that's the other problem with this overregulation and these regulations for the sake of regulating only, is you're pushing more and more people into the black market or back into it.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I'm saying? Like, so that's, I don't know. I'm with you.
Yeah, and
I go off on these tangents, and then like I know we're trying to.
No, you're good, dude. I
And,
mean, this is really good conversations that we need to have. Like, taxes. Taxes are one of the biggest reasons why California and these other states are having black market issues. On top of cities being allowed to ban cannabis sales in their cities.
Right.
I use this fact a lot, but only 30% of the cities in California actually sell cannabis within the city limits. 70% of them don't, and they ban it. And that's one thing that Colorado did. The county where my dad's from,
give them the opt-out option, right?
Yeah. He's from Fremont County, and they opted out, so they're only medical only. And I think that's kind of bullshit. And you add another stigma on top of the industry because you're saying, well, if we don't want it, we're not going to do it. Now, New Mexico, we've kind of seen some counties take an approach to almost try to ban it out directly with certain rules and stuff, but the law kind of gives us a cushion to them not to be able to do that. But
right.
There's still some things that they've gone around and done.
Right. They'll set like the restrictive, like so many feet from a building or whatever, knowing that there's no buildings in that immediate area available that somebody could get into.
Exactly. Or zone it in a certain way.
Right. They're not outright banning it, but they're making it impossible to find a space to open.
Yeah, exactly. And when taxes are high, black market's fucking high too. And they're happy and they're making a lot of money.
Well, because the margins are obviously going to be much higher in the black market, and if you're overtaxing people, especially because those margins are super slim at that point.
Oh yeah, I agree. And maybe we just need to go to what our medical program had at the time, is just a straight state tax. The 8% that we pay all around, and then they could split it up that way, and it should be more than enough, because if we go with the route that we're going, our taxes are going to increase in the next couple of years, and they increase years after that too. And I believe all the way to 30% or even higher. And I think they want to go higher. So if we allow that to happen, the black market is just going to thrive. And New Mexico is going to run into the same issues that California is having. Colorado still has, this issue a little bit, but cannabis is so cheap there. I don't think too many people really bother, but it's still so high that they could be making more money if they taxed it at a reasonable rate. I mean, Washington, it's like at 35%.
Yeah, well, that will directly, circling back to the medical thing, is that'll directly impact the medical market too, because what you're going to have is all these businesses, 80% of these businesses, most of them locals, that are going to have to shut down because they've been taxed out of the market. And all that's going to exist now are the big operators, the big names that have the ability to absorb that much cost and and tax. Basically you're almost going to monopolize it to just a couple operators. And do you think they're going to care about the medical market? Really? No. Because they're worried about their profit margins and staying in the black.
Yeah, exactly. And one thing I want to mention, guys, and I say this all the time, no state or any country has regulated cannabis correctly yet. We haven't figured it out. We don't know the best route to go yet. So the reason why I want to have these conversations is so we can make it better. New Mexico, we're actually being viewed by a lot of people. A lot of people are noticing us and the way that we regulated this and how it's a little more open, a little more loose. It's not quite like Oklahoma, but where it's a little more loose. We have significantly less water than most other states. So that kind of actually hinders us from becoming one of those places. But we're starting to see a saturation.
Right.
And one only positive with saturation is that I know patients have access, and that's one thing that was on my mind for a long time. And I hope that continues to happen. I know places are going to shut down, whatever, and the market's going to do what the market does. But I'm really happy at the moment that people do have access. And that's something good in the program to say that's going well. But as for a whole industry, there's a lot of changes that still need to happen in the future.
It's nowhere has achieved perfection, but we can always achieve progress.
Yeah.
That's the point.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And guys, if something doesn't change, and if we don't do something actively to make our program better, legislators don't start listening, we don't start working together, even businesses working together at the legislative level to make this better, our program is going to dissolve like the one in the 1970s.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
And I would say this, for businesses out there that have concerns and want to have some legislative influence, I'll call this a plug if you will, but there are some organizations like, down here in the South is the Southwest Cannabis Trade Association, where many of the businesses are kind of grouping together to establish a community, but also to be able to talk about our collective interests, our collective challenges, And again, I'm a adjacent business. I don't have a whole lot of skin in the game. I don't grow, manufacture any of those things. But there's a good grouping of these businesses that can, I believe, have some legislative influence if we are seeing issues.
Yeah.
But also, it's also a group of people, and many of us are patients and have our interests and our concerns and stuff, and we can talk about those things and ensure that those voices collectively are being heard by the legislators and the powers that be to make sure that we get the change that we want and that we need.
I agree, because I've been told directly by legislators that, why don't you guys get together as a cannabis industry and tell the legislators what you want, because that's what the microbreweries did.
Right.
They said, he straight up told me the microbreweries got what they wanted because they banded together and they told the legislators, this is what we need as an industry for it to operate correctly.
Right.
And that's what we need to do in the cannabis industry. I get it. We're so used to being cutthroat and just, secretive.
Yeah, the infighting needs to stop. Like, I know
does.
everybody thinks they grow the most fire, and
Yeah.
everybody, that person, the way they do it sucks. You got to do it this way or whatever. And it's like, okay. Yes, it's okay. There's going to be egos and stuff in every market, whatever. That's fine. But we need to set aside those things. Forget about that. Don't worry about what someone else's camp is doing, but understand that we do have similar challenges, and we do have ends that we all need to meet, but we can't do it alone.
Yeah.
Nobody is out there doing it alone. Not here, not California, not Colorado. No one is leading that charge as an individual and winning.
Yeah, no, I
or
agree,
being
100%.
heard.
Yeah, I agree 100%.
So yeah, it's like come together as a collective, find a way to band together and let your voices be heard.
Yeah.
Because many voices are heard a lot easier than just one.
No, I agree 100%. And sometimes it only takes two people for your representative to say my constituents.
100%. Yeah.
It's all it takes. It takes two people for it to be plural. So that is it for like the medical cannabis and medical cannabis dying in New Mexico. I hope to see something change positively for it. I'm hopeful, but at the same time, I'm kind of bracing myself for the worst for it. I don't want to see it dissolve. But yeah, and I'm sure this is a conversation that I'll have again in the future. It's close to my heart. I've been a patient for many, many years.
Well, I think it's you and 100,000 others that don't want to see it dissolve. So we need those 100,000.
Yeah, I agree 100%.
Yeah.
So let's move on to the next topic that we're going to be talking about. I could talk about the medical cannabis program all day. I mean, it's been most of the freaking episode. I really want to touch this bill because it's something that I kind of predicted that was going to happen. It's something that I knew was coming. Psilocybin advisory group. If you guys don't know what that is, it's magic mushrooms. And there's certain states that have actually already a medical industry on that side when it comes to psilocybin, and I believe it's Oregon. And I think Washington's going to follow in their footsteps here soon. Colorado, I believed, decriminalized it, or one of the cities did. And actually here in New Mexico, it's technically been legal here, due to the way that our language has been written for a very long time. You just can't dry the mushrooms, but you can, grow them and everything. So that's another fact that a lot of people don't know. There's a lawsuit. And
Sometimes the interpretations work in our favor.
Exactly. And the guy was actually from my hometown, Alamogordo, which, out of all places, I'm like, of course he was from Alamogordo. But what this bill will do is it's going to create a psilocybin advisory group. It's just going to be, composed of people who are, essentially seen as experts when it comes to psilocybin, doctors, people who have grown psilocybin before, even people from, our indigenous tribes, people that have had, experience with that, and I believe some kind of spiritual stuff too.
Yeah, well, this is the perfect place to do it because I know that there's been studies, and there's a really prominent professor. I'm not even going to try it his name, but up at UNM, that has been studying psilocybin and the effects, and the medicinal effects, and like even going as far as like you talk about with like the journey work and stuff like that, and how it impacts people with depression, how it impacts people, with bipolar disorder and all these like, mental health disorders, and what the positive impacts are. And that's really, really interesting. I'm glad to see that there's, some kind of push to legitimize that and keep that conversation going. We talk about cannabis, and the cannabis, industry is a whole other thing. But now we're exploring, something that I think has, I am sure we all think has needed to be touched on, is how do we help people with their mental health struggles that goes even deeper than that.
Yeah.
And so that I think that there's going to be an advisory committee to get this thing started is like, that's awesome.
I do too. And this is how, these kind of things start is, it starts with like an advisory group. Then an advisory group reports back to the state and the governor and, different committees. And then from there, they kind of suggest what the law and framework should look like for the industry. So this one is going to have 8 people on the panel. and they're going to be composed of like, physicians, like I said, social workers even going to be on there. There's going to be even a person experienced conducting research regarding therapeutic use of psilocybin. So that's really good to see that we're going to have people that already have experience studying it and they can give more of an in-depth explanation of why this would be a good idea, especially for New Mexico, because, the way that our laws are written already kind of allow us to, cultivate, mushrooms already.
Yeah. Well, I've never tried them, to be honest with you. I've never, but I myself, I suffer with depression, and I'm definitely curious because, from some of the studies that have come out and some, I guess even some little factoids and blurbs that I've come across, that it's possible to really alleviate some depressive symptoms and things for a long period of time off of a single dose.
Yeah.
I mean, so I don't know anything about that, but I'd be really interested in even, trying out one of those clinical trials, going that legal route and seeing what that might do. I would totally be interested in doing that.
Oh, if I wasn't allergic to mushrooms after I came back from Iraq, I was randomly allergic to mushrooms. And I would totally be into it. Being a veteran, dealing with the PTSD, I've heard several guys saying that, it's helped me out significantly. I go, weeks to months without even using a dose, feeling great. I'll just microdose. And guys, microdosing even with cannabis is great. But, a lot of people that I've been talking to that microdose mushrooms have been telling me that they have been feeling the effects of it in a positive manner, almost a reprogram.
Yeah.
In that sense is what they're telling me anyway. So, I'm not a scientist. I'm not a doctor. I can tell you, the scientific thing behind it. I'm still learning about, psilocybin and everything. I still study it, but this is still something that's very important for New Mexico. And I kind of feel that it was something that needed to be talked about,
Definitely.
Something that I really didn't really see around, but, I'm really excited for this to see where it goes in the next couple of years.
Yeah. I mean, and it's going to have its own stigma, no doubt about it.
Yeah.
Anytime you start talking about psychedelics, obviously you get the images of the 1960s, the acid trips and all that stuff. And of course, that's, how weed has reefer madness, psilocybin and other psychedelics, they're going to have 1960s hippie movement.
Yeah.
But, hopefully people will look past that and really look into the science of what's happening. I can't speak to the science, but again, there is an attempt now at a legitimate study for these things and to see its medicinal properties, and we need to pay attention.
Yeah. And, New Mexico, again, we could be at the start of the forefront of something that's going to change nationally. Once a couple of states start doing it and once more collectively do it, the rest of the states start doing the same thing. So we're just going to be on the earlier front than we normally are. So this advisory group, they're going to have to report to the governor, the Legislative Health and Human Services Committee, and the Legislative Finance Committee, and the whole legislature by December 1st, 2025. So they have a couple of years to do this. They're going to get a lot of the funding from somewhere else, of course, and like a bunch of other things. If you guys want to read about this, the bill is HB 393. I forgot to get who the representative was who introduced it. I'm not sure at the moment, but if you look that up over on the nmlegis.gov website, you'll be able to find it and figure it out more. And it's obvious. It's called Psilocybin Advisory Group. So that's all for that one. It's a really short bill. There's going to be more that'll come in the following years. I say 2025 to probably 2026 is probably when we're going to see an actual bill introduced, unless some legislator gets a wild hair up his ass or her ass or their ass, and they decide to introduce a bill on their own and kind of say, screw the study, we just want to do it now. And the legislature decides it and the governor signs it, then it could be earlier than that.
Yeah, it's interesting. We're in a neat place, and I'm just glad to see that there's focus being, or at least people's mental health is being brought into view.
Yes.
This is the purpose of these things. It's not because we're all excited to go on acid trips and go dance naked in the desert. It's because or that. But no, it's because we're trying to bring mental health into view, and that has obviously been a major topic. It's been a hot button in politics. It's been part of the conversation now for years. I mean, we're dealing with mass shootings and all kinds of these different events where the first thing that's brought up afterwards is mental health. What are these people's mental health looks like? Well, we don't have a really clear picture of mental health in this country, in this state, and anywhere. And so if we're starting to look that direction, that's all positive to me.
No, 100%. And I'm glad that we are going that direction. So I appreciate your words on that, and I'm glad, we're kind of, we are in agreement and everything. And, I wouldn't be mad if we weren't, but, it's great to see that more people are into it and you've never even used it. So
yeah, no. And I know that there will be a resistance.
Yes.
And people, every time they start to say, oh, they just want to legalize drugs. And it's like, it's not it. You got to look deeper than that.
Drugs already legal, buddy. You can go to your doctor and get it.
Yeah, exactly, dude. Like there's more than just legal opioids, man. There's other ways to, to see positive change forward, and people need to look at that more closely than these, these little empty platitudes of just like, oh, you guys just want your drugs. It's like, no, that's not it. We want effective drugs to help us with our ailments, to help us lead a happier life. You know what I mean? The pursuit of happiness.
Yeah.
We're not, these tripped out liberal nut jobs, like that, want to, just do drugs all day. We are people that just want to pursue our happiness.
No, I agree 100% because if we allow that stigma and everything to continue, then nothing's going to progress, and that's what we had to do on the on the cannabis side.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of feel that the industry is actually going to have to back the psilocybin people and everything. And I kind of feel that if the cannabis industry kind of not hops on the back, but gives them a hand, legislatively, shows the ropes, shows up to some committees, kind of gives them, a 411 of what it's like to be in an industry and a part of an industry that's so, hush hush and so kind of secretive and so kind of
and stigmatized.
Taboo. Yeah, so taboo.
Because what are they really? They're how different are they from us really? It's
not at all.
It's a natural product that is made illegal but has medicinal benefits, just like cannabis.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. We have to. I think we all need to be in that corner.
Yeah, I agree. So if you guys want to look it up more again, it's HB 393. If you guys want to have more of a conversation on it, I posted that link of it on my Facebook page. So if you guys want to, make your comments, opinions on the comments, I'm not going to respond. I'm just going to allow you guys to come up with your own opinions. And I'm just kind of curious to see what you guys really think of and what you come up with. Maybe there's some ideas and stuff that I don't think about, or maybe, Koko didn't think about. And I really like seeing your guys' opinion. So anyway, we're going to jump on to one of the second to the last topics. And it's UNM actually came out with another research. And this one kind of ties into the one that I talked about before, but I wanted to talk about this one separately. I wanted to keep them separate. So what they're doing at UNM is they're really working with the terpene profiles, and they're calling it chemovars. The whole, terpenes and everything, they call them chemovars.
Right.
And what they've done now is they've actually found out that terpenes in cannabis, and specifically certain types of terpenes in cannabis, have been linked to a better patient outcome of relieving their symptoms. And what that means is that flower containing higher levels of specific terpenes, and there's a couple in here, and there's two main ones, and we'll get to it in a second, have just been helping people, alleviate stress, alleviate pain, alleviate, PTSD symptoms and stuff like that. So that's really great to see. And what they did is they used data from the Relief app from 2015 to 2021 on 633 flower products. Now, just flower. This isn't concentrates. This isn't edibles or anything else. This is just flower products. So keep that in mind. When you look at studies, keep certain things in mind. And they assess the trends between the cannabinoid and the terpenes content, and what they're called, I guess, the chemovars.
Right.
I learned that fairly recently. And so what it is, and their perceived effects on the consumer. So what it is someone's smoking it and they're reporting on the app what they're feeling and everything from that terpene profile. And so myrcene and terpioline, I don't know if I said that one right. Some of these I have a hard time saying. They seem to be two of the major ones that help with, alleviating pain and anxiety and stuff. So that's why I said, specifically certain ones do help people. Now, there could be a person who, maybe pinene helps them in a certain way, maybe limonene, maybe some other terpene, like there's certain times where I kind of get a peppers, flavor from it, and I can't think of it at the top of my head, the name of the terpene profile, and I had the hardest time saying it for the long time.
Right.
But this is a really cool study. But one thing that I want everybody to keep in mind, and that I found out and I found it was intriguing, is that cannabis flower that had CBD in it seemed to give less of a symptom relief than ones that had, no CBD in it at all. So you're looking at your 25% THCs with your like 0.01001% CBDs. They seem to be more seem to be better at alleviating pain. So maybe
depending on the terpene profile.
Depending on the terpene profile.
But so they're finding that the terpene profile has much more of an effect than they originally thought. They thought it was THC, CBD. You know, I know that was always broken down to like indica and sativa based on effect. But now because of, you know, better studies, and this is what it kind of comes down to, is because they've allowed these legitimate scientific studies to go deeper into cannabis, they're really discovering where these things come from. Is that what I'm understanding?
Yeah, no, exactly. And, you know, we're finding out the real medical benefits and where in cannabis are these medical benefits coming from, because for the longest time we didn't really know. We just, you know, THC, CBD, and we keep finding compounds all the time, different ones and what they do. And that's where the HHC, the delta 8, the delta 10, that's where all those come from, because they do exist in the cannabis plant naturally. It's just very, very, very tiny, minute quantities, and it doesn't really make sense to extract it. So that's why something like this is very important, very intriguing, and I'm not sure why it's not talked about more. Only a few people have really shown interest in this,
probably because it's complicated. It definitely is. It's not an easy chat, and we're just learning about it, you know. And people don't like to get over, because, you know, that's the other thing is the general consumer, and this also comes down to this point where so much focus is in the recreational market. The general consumer just wants to know, you know, if they're going in, what's, you know, they're looking at THC percentage because they think that's how high they're going to get.
Yeah.
That's like, you know, a very, very low level understanding of the plant. And that's all they usually need to go in and buy their product. And that's all that these businesses are going to push, because that's all they needed to do is to sell the product. Right. So this is really cool. So I think that's why it's not being talked about, but it definitely needs to, particularly for, like we're talking about, for the medical, to support the medical side. We got to understand this stuff. And it all comes down to, again, allowing these scientific studies to happen. So it all circles back, even back to the psilocybin thing. We got to allow good science to happen in order to understand the benefits of these things. And so, you know, that's it all comes back down to making sure legislation matches that. So it's not just this big scary drug monster. It's we got to look into this a little deeper, because we're going to find positive change.
No, exactly. I agree. You know, and, you know, the more we study, the more we learn about the cannabis plant, the less we can fear on it. And, you know, that's great that, you know, something like this is coming out. And I've been a huge proponent of, you know, terpenes and terpene profiles and really good tasting weed, because why wouldn't you want your cannabis to smell good and taste good? And I don't want to put it in a blunt wrap, because actually what blunt wraps were in blunts like that and wraps, guys, what they essentially were meant for in the past was for really shitty tasting weed. And the reason why you use that is to make it taste better, because you smoke Reggie. So if someone smokes a blunt, they're using a blunt wrap, in my mind, I'm like, I hope that's not shitty weed. Because if you have good weed, you just roll a joint and it tastes amazing still.
Well, I think that eventually, you know, people, as they become more in tune to this conversation, understanding the terpenes, like you talk about, some, you know, have a peppery, some are lemony, some are, you're going to be able to identify these things. And a lot of people can. There's these ganjiers and these other people that they can smell a type of weed or whatever and understand, and they can even almost tell you what kind of terpenes are likely in it and which ones are more prominent than the others. It reminds me of, like, you know, when like wine tasting, you go, you taste it, you swirl it, you swish it, or whatever. And people, you know, they say, I don't know much about wine, but like they say they can identify certain flavor profiles, certain things about it. And so there's a sophistication to it. And I think that that's where we're going with cannabis. There's going to be people that can tell, but also from the medical side, you know, being able to isolate those, and people grow those things with those things in mind, then they're going to be able to serve medical patients much better.
No, I agree 100%. And, you know, the more we know, the better we know. And because I go to dispensaries and I'll say, do you have anything with the terpene range between 1.5% to 3%? Because that's usually, and it's not high percentage, you know, just that 3% to 2%, you can tell the difference. You know, I've grown cannabis that had, you know, higher, you know, about 2%, 2.5 to 2.6% in the terpenes, and it smelled and tasted amazing. You know, so you can only imagine what a 3% was. But when I go to Washington, I can find those. You know, I can say, hey, I want something high in the terpenes. They put that on the label. So New Mexico, if you guys really want to get ahead of the curve, start looking at the terpene profiles and putting that on your labeling and your packaging, because that's coming. I ask all the time when I go to dispensaries, you know, what's your terpene profiles? You know, you know, what's the percentages? How good does it taste? How good does it smell?
Where can you find it? Are you able to find it on the packaging stuff if your bud tender doesn't know? Or
so what a lot of them have told me, because some of them do have the percentage. It's a very small percentage of them who do, but normally it's on their testing results. I know Rio Grande Analytics, they have the terpene testing profile on there, so they could tell you, but they have to go in the back, pull out the testing for it, and then show you which. If you really want to get that terp that might be worth it, And if they shook the jar, please tell them to give you another jar because, that's not good cannabis anymore. So that's pretty much all I wanted to talk about that one. Did you have anything else on it? Or
No, I mean, that whole concept, it's not foreign to me. I've heard about it, but I don't really like go into that deeply. And so that's why I asked, because like if somebody is really interested in that terpene profile, and it's not, if someone doesn't know, if you get that deer in the headlights look when you ask, because I'm sure that can't happen.
Yeah.
Like it's cool to know if they can request can a general person request that the testing results? Can they request
Yeah,
that?
you know what? You guys can, and you should. If you're questionable about the cannabis receiving at a dispensary or wherever you are, ask for the testing results. We did this when they first went legal and they thought we were the DOH and shady or whatever, but we were just curious. We wanted to see the testing results. And then that's another way that you can probably tell that they're selling black market cannabis is if they can't show you the testing results,
right?
Or the correct testing results. If there's no testing results, then that probably means it's black market. And that might have been the reason why they thought we were the DOH. But we were just really wanting to see the testing results. And sometimes I do ask them, like, do you have the testing results? Because I just really want to see the full on terpene profile and everything. That's really what I'm looking for. And, if you can't show me that, then I don't know what to tell you.
Right.
So don't be afraid to ask for the test, guys. You're allowed to do that. And
you have a right to know what's going into your body, what's going into your lungs and shit. Yeah. And so, yeah, I didn't know you could do that. I would have never thought to do that.
Yeah. Just ask them, can I see the test results? And they should be able to pull it up for you because that's a requirement in the state.
Interesting.
Yeah. So keep that in mind, guys. Educating the public.
And educating me. I appreciate that.
Yeah, no problem. That's what this show's about. So the last thing we're going to talk about, and it's actually on the federal side. So one of the federal agencies, and this will be quick actually, one of the federal agencies here in the United States warned us about CBD and its potential harms. And more or less what they're talking about is the lack of oversight and, how much shady CBD and crap is out there and harmful because that could hurt you. And, some of the stuff that they're advising you on could come from just, lack of good grows and, this and that, and having a really good place to get it. And this is just an example of how lack of regulation can be a bad thing too, because the CBD side, it's not regulated very heavily as like the federally illegal cannabis side, just regular cannabis side, the THC side. So the risk that they're talking about is it can interact with other drugs, and what they call is adverse drug interaction. So if you're taking a certain prescription, and I've actually known this for years, CBD can and will interact with other prescription drugs. So it's a good idea to get with your doctor if you're taking a bunch of prescription pills to ask them if cannabis and CBD is a good idea for you.
Yeah, you should do it with anything, because some things you can take with even just food or not. You know what I mean? There's reactions to
that. Have milk.
It might seem like, oh, that's so scary, but it can be as innocuous as just don't take this with food for a very good reason. You know what I mean? So that's interesting. The point you're making though is you were saying that because it's lack of regulation, that you're saying there's also like some bad operators there, like putting out poor quality CBD as well.
Yeah, more bad operators than good operators, and a lot of these people aren't truthful and faithful to what they're saying and they're pushing out there. And there's a lot of scams. I did a short stint at a CBD shop, and you'd get people come in like, "Hey, I saw this. It says it's 20 million milligrams and it's $20, and it's a scam."
Yeah,
it's really not that. So you got to do your due diligence. If you're somewhere and it's shady, ask for the testing results. You can still do that on the CBD side. If they can't, then just take your business somewhere else. It's really not that hard, unless you're in a bind and you need to get it. Then by all means, do what you want to do. I wanted to move on and just tell the two last things that they warned on. I guess there's claiming that it can cause liver toxicity and reproductive and development effects, meaning reproductive, organs could be affected, meaning, lower sperm count, and development effects, meaning, your brain really doesn't stop developing until your mid 20s.
Right.
And so it could,
talk about like the plasticity of your brain.
Yeah, exactly. So, that's actually known on the cannabis side too, that you shouldn't be using cannabis under a certain age threshold, even though the age is at 21. Around mid 25s, your brain really starts to mature. And some people feel it. I felt it when mine kind of started to mature more, and everything changed and my ideas changed, and what I wanted to do changed. So keep that in mind, guys. Now again, this comes from the federal government. I don't know what studies they use. The liver toxicity could come from the lack of oversight in the CBD industry with the way that it's grown. There could be pesticides in it, heavy metals. They could use some other method to try to cure it for testing, so that way not cure it, but cure the issue that's
Right.
that it has with it for testing.
And it can also just be a very general warning. I mean, it sounds bad on the face of it too, but like, yeah, there's reactions to everything. I mean, we just dealt with this with my youngest son. You know, he has asthma and he has to take some certain medications, and when he has flare-ups, he takes additional medications, which it turns out have, if you give him ibuprofen on top of it, if he's developing a fever and you use it as a fever reducer, has adverse reactions. Something is, nothing is ibuprofen. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So it's the same thing. It's I think the warning is just to say, like, look, CBD isn't a blanket for everything, for everybody who's taking everything. Make sure you're checking. Remember, it is a medication. CBD is medication. THC is a medication. Make sure you're checking those I'm sorry, I forgot the word you used, but like when you're using these, if you're going to be using these medicines in combination with one another, make sure they don't have any adverse side effects. And CBD is no exception.
No, at all.
No doubt. No, no joke.
No, yeah, definitely. And it's just smart to do that all around, guys, just to make sure that you're not doing something harmful to your body, because the human body is very resilient, but only to a certain point.
Sure.
We still want you guys around here, and I want you to watch the Ask Chad Grassy Logic every week, because that is actually the end of our show.
Sweet.
That is all the topics I have. And thank you so much, Koko, for joining me this week. Again, where can the people find you at, 4C's Cannabis and Koko Dean, and, get the snappy snaps for their, products?
You can find me around Las Cruces, dude, at most fast food restaurants. No, you find me at www.4cscannabis.com or on Instagram, 4Cs Cannabis. If you message us, it's usually me who will respond. So if you want to, connect with me or chat with me or, talk to me after this or tell me, I said something wrong on here, I'm there for you to hear it, dude. That's cool. Like, I'm very easygoing, and I'd love to chat about, cannabis. I'd love to chat about, photography, business, whatever, dude. Like, I feel I'm pretty easygoing. So if you guys have interest after this, 4cscannabis.com or Instagram at 4cscannabis.
Cool. Awesome. Well, I really appreciate you coming in and having this conversation with me, man. I always have a really good conversation talking to you. It's always laid back and chill, and I really love your perspective. So maybe sometime, guys, I'll start something called the Ask Chad Grassy Logic after show, where we'll go to my house or something, we'll smoke, and we'll have a little after show and just kind of kick back and bullshit. And,
I like that.
Yeah. So
like
that's something I've been, thinking about, and I think I want to implement that here soon. So keep in tune for that. And I'll see you guys next week on Ask Chad Grassy Logic, and I'll get you guys a topic and everything around then. So I'll see you again.